There we are. We are live, and one of the final virtually connecting sessions from Open Ed in Anaheim, California. It's a pleasure to meet with you. Why don't you introduce yourselves there on site, and then we'll introduce the virtual guests.
Hi, I'm Regina Gong, and I'm the OER project manager at Lansing Community College in Michigan.
Hi, I'm Vedham Karpaka. I teach biology at Montgomery College, Maryland, and I have experience working with OERs, and I'm part of a team that developed a Z version of a non-majors biology course that we are piloting this semester campus-wide for all sections.
Wow.
And I'm Nate Angel. I work for Hypothesis, which is the nonprofit open source technology that allows annotation across the web. And I'm just here as the on-site buddy for this virtual connecting session. I'm going to let these guys talk.
And I'm Helen Ward. I teach at the Faculty of Education here in Central Ontario. So I'm teaching future teachers. And Joe.
I'm Joe Murphy. I'm the director of the Center for Innovative Pedagogy at Kenyon College. So I work with existing faculty. I buy faculty members lunch and get them talking and find out what they find out what they want to do. And one of my goals is to introduce more open concepts to them. I grew up in Rockville, Maryland, so Vedham, I have some idea of the great work you're doing at Montgomery College. Hello again, Ken.
So I don't know, maybe we want to start it off with, I know in the last session, they just started off with maybe just as this conference comes to a close, as Open Ed 17 comes to a close, what are you walking out the door with? What's your main, if you have one main thought or a couple of thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is my third Open Ed. The first one was in Vancouver. The second one was in Richmond, and this one. I think every time I attend Open Ed, there's, my eyes are opened. My world is in the library world, and the reason why I really feel that my work as a librarian really dovetails with the open education movement is that I really believe in access, in freeing information. And that's what libraries do, right? We provide all of that regardless. So equity and equitable access to information. And so I think, bye Ken. So I think this year, because I have more experience, it's been 2 years that I've been leading and running our OER project at LCC. The conversation now is not so much as, how many OER adoptions do you have in your college? How much money have you saved? Yes, it is still important, but the conversations now has shifted, even with us librarians, and there's a number of us here in this conference, as in previous Open Ed conference. The conversation now has shifted to, how are you? Like, how are you, Regina? How are you? Or how are you? And, it's like, how are you doing with all of this that you are doing? Because in our case, OER or open education initiatives in our campuses is not the work that we do, not the only work that we do. Usually it's on top of what we already do. And so it really, the conversation is really, how do we sustain this? The labor that is being done by the people who are driving and supporting and encouraging faculty is not that much talked about in the you know, as a session or as a presentation. It happens in the fringes. It happens in the hallway. It happens during lunch. But I think that is important. The sustainability is not just providing the funds or the money to grant faculty the stipends to go open. I think we need to have that conversation too with supporting the people who help faculty do the work that they do. So that's my take, personal take on it, because that's my takeaway.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Almost like a, okay, we've been doing this work for a while now.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the human infrastructure that it takes to get it done.
Yes. Yeah, the human infrastructure. So we're talking about, how do we deposit all of this? The tools. Hypothesis is a tool, Pressbooks is a tool, but these tools are not the ones that's driving this. It's the human people who it's the person doing it. And so the emotional labor, the hard labor that it takes to do this is, I think, not talked about that often.
And that connects to what Jim Luke was just talking about with the economics, the economic factors, and the data doesn't show the emotional human labor component in the work that we do with Open Ed.
Yeah.
It is hidden.
Yes, it is hidden. Yeah.
What about you?
This is my first time to Open Ed, and I came with an open mind. I had a lot of questions in my mind to ask and share, and not necessarily find solutions, but at least see if out there colleagues with similar issues that they're dealing with. My major concern now is, yes, Montgomery College, especially our biology department, with this one course, we have moved far ahead with having open resources-based pedagogical approaches. But now it's about maintaining those resources, curating new resources, and who is going to be responsible for that, and how many people and what kind of team we should form. And we have wonderful support from instructional designers in our campus. How do we best use those resources that they can provide and make things better for our students? I think that's where most of my discussions in this conference with colleagues who came here were on.
It almost seems like, Truth in Advertising, before I worked for Hypothesis, I worked with Lumen Learning, which was very involved in the spread of helping institutions adopt OER. And what I'm hearing you both say is that we've reached a kind of second phase in the work where it's gone beyond starting it and getting it going. And it's now about how is it going to be institutionalized? How is it going to be sustained? How are you, as the human being whose labor is hidden, going to be sustained? Who's going to come after you? Who's going to join you? Questions like that.
Yeah.
So one of the other conversations we had earlier today was around OER and open past the terrible twos, and we're now into the teenage years.
Yeah.
So how do you sustain teenagers?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Is OER a teenager now?
There's a debate. Yeah.
So I think that connects in a really interesting way, that we've got this relatively high-profile work that's mostly done by faculty in terms of the creation and curation of a lot of these resources is attributed to faculty. There's a chunk of that work that's happening from those of us in academic support roles of different levels of professionalism, quite frankly. As a librarian myself, trained, we have invisible labor issues inside our shops, as well as the visibility of our labor outside our shops. And then I'm really intrigued by the invoking of emotional labor.
Yeah.
In part because I'm at a point where I wonder, to what extent does the emotional labor need to be compensated emotionally? As well as the fact that labor just needs to be compensated. And you need a job that doesn't take 80 hours a week to do it. But you know, in terms of supporting teenagers, I'm not there yet, but it's coming fast. And every time my son eats another, you know, 4 plates of dinner, I see how quickly it's coming. But you know, I think that question of what is emotional support for OER, it feels squishy, but I think it's also probably important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the emotional support is, I mean, how can you even quantify that, right? The labor that we put into our work, not just in the OE world, you know, in whatever work we do as a faculty, as the person who manages a college-wide initiative. I think it's important to be supportive, you know, supportive of your colleagues who do the work. Certainly, like, the support should be not just the encouragement, but really the connecting of people. Because, you know, sometimes, like, Jim knows this, and I mean, I find a lot of myself connecting others to each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like, oh, it matches your profile. I know that. You know, I think that one really is one of the benefits of attending this type of conferences, because then you kind of have a sense of who's doing what, like Daniel was saying, and then connecting it with people who are already thinking of doing it. And so, you know, I think that is a valuable support as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, when I teach and I see the reaction from students, and when this is something that I had created, or with colleagues, we have created this as a team, and we are delivering it to the students, and students are appreciating that. I think that's where it comes a full circle. The entire effort, both emotionally and in all aspects, not just both, in all aspects, everything that has gone into creating that source, I think it reaches its fruition when you actually get the feedback from the students. And in my, we had a presentation, Samantha, Venaruso, Shinta Hernandez, and I had a presentation on the first day of the conference, where one of the examples I gave was on using these 3D printed models of cells. When I made that for my class, I was not thinking how widely it can be successfully used until that last week, when I used that model in my activity in my classroom, where for the first time I had a legally blind student as part of the class. And that night she sent me an email saying how useful having that model to feel was for her to understand what was going on in the classroom. I was not thinking of a blind student when I made the model, but then when I see that it's going beyond what I expected, I think that's something you can place value on that.
And then even, Vedham, to see it extending to other classes in other contexts, and the potential that it'll impact other students in maybe the same ways. That's a powerful lesson.
Yeah.
Do you see students' work as being part of that? I know with Robin DeRosa, she has students actually creating and you know, co-creating the text material. Do you see your students potentially doing that as part of that sustainability piece?
I haven't tried it yet. I do try to, in some semesters, depending on the kind of load I have, I try to use ePortfolio as an option for students to, you know, reflect on their activities and do that. There you do get some student created material, but I haven't done it on a regular basis. That's something I still have to explore.
Are you all familiar with Mike Caulfield's name keeps getting invoked, but are you familiar with his concept of a choral explanation? Choral, C-H-O-R-A-L, like choral singing. So he's been playing around with this idea of choral explanations. I guess I could be on camera too. where there's multiple explanations for the same thing, right? And your anecdote about the legally blind student calls it into question because, or brings it up as a possibility, because one thing that students could do, I think, very easily, because it can be actually an assignment in the course, is provide alternative readings or explanations for something. So if you take one particular concept in cellular biology, which I know nothing about, to say that, and just like a layer of Post-its, right? All the different ways that every student in class says, the way I finally understood this was this, or what was important to me was the color, or something like that. It may not all be valuable.
Sure.
It may be valuable for them, but some of the things that they write may be valuable to someone else. And it's kind of a, I would call it almost like a gateway drug to, to that kind of participation.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, for us at LCC, we're not quite there yet in a massive scale, you know, the student participation. Although Jim, look, my colleague is running the Open Learning Lab at LCC. However, there are a number of faculty that we have, especially those who created their own open textbook, who like, you know, one of our faculty, a philosophy professor, had his students write, like find examples, current examples that can be incorporated in the, so it's intro to logic and critical thinking. So new examples, letting the students find errors, grab, you know, like spelling errors in the textbook. And also one thing that I suggested was, how about having your students design the cover art for your book? And yeah, I took it up and the students did it. So, you know, I mean, those little things that kind of morph into something more that the students can participate. Also, one thing that kind of struck me in this conference was during the student panel, right? Was that Wednesday? Yeah, that was Wednesday. I mean, these are students from Santa Ana College, which is a community college here nearby. And when I see those students and the things that they've told us in the panel, I mean, those are our students. You know, none of the things they said in that panel were new to me, because I've heard our students say that over and over again. That's why let's not discount the cost factor of all this, because that cost, the savings, is important to our students. It impacted their life. It's a choice between food, shelter, daycare. And sometimes, you know, I hear people like, oh, you know, savings, it's just savings. But that savings, if it is, even if it's just $100, is impactful for a student. So, you know, not probably so much to so savings and access. The mere fact that it's reusable, the 5 hours, I mean, I don't think that's probably in their 5th, you know, yeah, right? I think it's just, it's just for faculty, you know, But who are we doing it with? It's for the students. So it's really the access.
I was going to bring up the students, the student keynote.
Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead and give them the recognition they deserve here
Keynote.
too, because thinking about that emotional cycle that we were talking about, and one thing that I heard the students say was that from their OER faculty and teachers and techs, they really felt a passion and commitment from faculty that they don't normally always feel. That came through to them.
Yes.
And then they pay it back by saying how much it impacted their life. It doesn't take very much for us to feel a little lifted up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if one student tells us, you changed my life.
Right.
Yes,
Absolutely, yes.
That counts for a lot.
Yeah.
Or maybe your whole term.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much.
Absolutely, yes.
But I think there is that, there's a way that there's a circuit created because because they know that the faculty are putting and librarians and other people are putting passion into this, and then they can sense that.
Yeah. Yeah. When they said that, oh, put your voice, right? Put your voice in it, not just adopt something as is without putting your mark in it, you know? And one thing that kind of struck me too is there's thousands of us or hundreds of us. You have hundreds of us, but we only have one of you.
Yes, right.
So yeah,
That's so true. Yeah, we forget sometimes the impact we have.
Yeah. So
when you another thing that's happened a lot at this particular Open Ed, I think, is a lot of conversation about sort of, do we need to continue to focus on the pragmatics of what we're doing? You know, the tools, how to convince people to do things, or the larger questions about social justice, not only in the projects we're working on, but in this community itself. You know, who has the leadership and voice here and so forth. And I'm wondering if you guys felt that that dialogue going back and forth between the kind of what you might call pragmatism and more of a almost like a political viewpoint about what was going on. Did that come out to you in the conference at all?
I didn't notice so much of that conference. I don't think so. But at a micro scale, while we were a few years ago when we started thinking about OER initiatives in the college, one aspect is to identify the faculty who are ready to work on this, and the other is on how to bring aboard the others who are either hesitant to get in because they don't know what OERs are, and there are few who are completely against it. They don't even want to talk about it, and they don't want to know about it. And so there's a lot of micro scale, very institutional based political thing going on, where the team that's working on the open educational resources, they had to come up with talking points that they can take to their fellow department colleagues and talk to them, not necessarily convince, but tell them, hey, this is what we envision to happen for this course. And if you have hesitations, what are those? We would like to know what those points that are keeping you away from, jumping into this bandwagon. And some of them were willing to accept and come to the other side and help us out. And there were others who they were not against. I mean, at least in biology, there were not any faculty who were completely against it, but they will just not be involved in the whole effort. They will not be an obstacle, but they don't want to be part of the whole effort, which is okay, and because that's something we don't want to get into if we don't have to. So
you don't want to force anyone.
Yes, right.
What about you, Regina?
Yeah, we actually have conversations about, the politics of it all, mainly, concerning administrators, presidents, and, colleges. On the other hand, too, I have conversations with faculty who wish that their librarians are on board. Because they're not. And I see that in initiatives where librarians are not involved, either as leading or supporting, it makes the work of faculty really hard. And I also have conversations about, I really want to follow what you did. And I always say, it's not one size fits all, I mean, like, for us, we didn't start with awards. We didn't start with grants. We didn't start with stipends. And I'm thankful for that, because at least it bubbled up,
organically.
Yes, it kind of was like a grassroots movement of the faculty who are really imbibing the philosophy of openness, of access, of leveling the playing field. then you have that core group of faculty now who did it in spite of, despite of, and then they can be advocates for other faculty. So I think, and I talk to a lot of my librarians colleague, that if you don't have awards, that shouldn't prevent you. You know, it shouldn't. Because sometimes, yes, I have an award for one semester and then the next semester, none. Then you get that wall, right? I mean, Joe, right? You know, then you get that wall. Oh, I'm not going to do it because there's no more funds. There's no more incentives. So that can work against you too. So
yeah, that question goes back to that question of sustainability. Right, and if you, it sounds like in your college that you built the program on a kind of, I would almost say like it's like a native species, right?
Yes,
it's grown up out of the soil of of what's real there.
And 2 years after, so we started in like the adoptions. 2 years, so we started fall 2015. Now it's fall 2017. That I was able to convince our administrator, because you know we're getting all this national attention, and I'm very active in the open ed world and all that. Okay, Regina, we're ready to give $500,000. That's the allocation. Yes, yes, yeah, yes, and yes. So we have, and it comes from the college. So we made a big announcement of that. So now call for applications for faculty is, so if you want to see it, it's at, if you just Google LCC OER award program, you'll see that. So it's $500,000 for faculty support stipends.
That's pretty large amount of money for a single college.
Yeah, and you know, I was like, oh, we applied for the ATD grant, for the Z degree grant, we didn't get it. And Richard Sebastian was telling me the reason why. And he was like kind of prophetic, and he was saying, because Regina, we feel that even if you don't get the $100,000 ATD grant, you're gonna do it anyway. And you know, a year after, yeah, we got more than what we could have gotten from the grants. So,
and I'll say frankly, having worked on ATD quite a bit,
yes,
your $500,000 without the requirements of the grant will go a lot farther.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I think it is interesting, and it sounds like you guys have had very similar experiences to a lot of mine, how much faculty are and staff are hungry for connection. One of the things I find is they're just hungry. I can get a lot more work out of a sandwich than I could get out of a similar amount of money. But you know, how much, you know, people are looking for opportunities to get out of their academic silos, maybe get out of their established work patterns, and you know, work on something meaningful with their colleagues. Although we have to appreciate the fact that this does, you know, it's at least different labor, it's new labor, it has to come from somewhere, and that may require compensation, but it sounds very similar, that these ideas of how do we bring that core group together that cares and that changes the ethos of our institution. It's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, there's one more thing before we end.
Sure.
I was listening to the Virtually Connecting earlier, and Daniel was saying, "Oh, we're past that. We're past that OER. What is?" But the thing is, we come here at very different stages, right? And so we are not going to prevent anyone from joining or coming into this sphere, right? The Open Ed Conference, because they don't know anything about OER. There will always be people who don't, right? And for those people who are already past that, then they're past that. But there's also gonna be conversations. It should be a place for those people who are just starting from zero.
because sometimes they ask really good questions
Yes.
that shift the thinking for those who've been doing it and figure they know it all.
Yeah, yeah. And so I hope we don't forget those people, because you know, sometimes the open ed movement becomes then like a core group of people who are enlightened, and those who are not are being discriminated. I don't know. I mean, probably not being, we're not as open because
I really caution, it's that two-tiered level for those who are in the know and get it, and those that are just coming in and trying to get to understand what it's all about. Yeah, we don't want to see that.
I think it's important for those of us who've been doing it for a long time, to always remember that.
Yes.
And always be willing to have a conversation at every level.
Yes,
so
that's
to a brand newcomer,
yeah, I hope we don't forget that, because I didn't come in here knowing about open pedagogy.
Shall we make a pledge right now?
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Regina. We will not forget.
Yeah.
We need a hashtag for this, I think. I don't know what the right one is. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Open pinky swear.
You saw it here on Virtually Connecting first.
Yes.
The meme started here.
Thank you so much for the conversation and taking the time out of your conference. We really appreciate it. I've enjoyed the time together.
And the best thing, let's remember ourselves, even though we didn't have a lot of participants, which made for a great conversation, the recording of this will be up. And so this will be able to be shared with more people.
Yeah.
So when we start that meme, there will be a record.
Yes.
and refer it back to this conversation.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. I'm going to stop broadcast.